and that's how we feel, okay? Because I actually came in once when we were moved from 112 to 114. I was over there and I said, what are we here for? And they said, Math 261. I'm like, really? And then I called, I'm like, where am I supposed to be? All right. Has anybody been in EPICS before? You should run to Stanley Coulter. This is for the new, were you in it last semester? Yeah. Okay. Oh, geez, wait. I'm like, you can't read because it's not on there. Wait. Source.cam, PC. PC, send a screen, PC. Boom. All right, Stanley Coulter 239 is where they're returning. Okay?
So can I go now?
Yeah. All right. If you've been in EPICS before, you should go over there and you can take the stuff that you have. The rest of you have never been in EPICS before, right? Yeah. Oh, wow, you guys are actually awake. You're aware it's like 4:30 on a Monday, right? So you should be, this is cool. All right. I am, well, not there. I'm Professor Oakes. I am the director of EPICS. I advise, I should have GAPS team and a new team, EWB Engineers Without Borders. I will warn you, I'm a mechanical engineer. Yeah, and some of you are like, why would I warn you? Because I'm guessing we've got about 50 different majors in here. So if I start to use language, I'm like, this doesn't sound like me. Raise your hand and say, could you translate that out of mechanical engineering into my native language, whatever that would be? Native language, sorry, disciplinary language. Don't go native language. I speak English and some other things, but not really well, okay? I teach in first year. How many of you are in the learning community? All right, bad news, you're going to see me tomorrow too, in 133, but we'll have fun with that. All right, so the goal for today is to give you an overview of what you've gotten yourselves into and what to expect a little bit in this first week. So we'll talk about what EPICS is, talk about expectations, a little bit about grading. You should have a handout, a packet, right, where you've got a syllabus, and then you've got yellow form, white form, and a pink, individual documentation, okay? Before you leave, there's 3 things we're going to collect. You should have a Scantron, right? Sorry, you will have a Scantron, okay? These forms, if for some reason you do not find me entertaining enough, you can start to fill out the yellow and the white. By the way, you should all call home, text, Facebook, whatever, your parents and said, you know what, at 4:30 today I got asked to be a model. Okay, you all have. The yellow form is a model release, so we can use your picture. We asked you to be a model, okay? And then you can it's important. Parents want to know you're being successful. Like, wow, somebody's seen the beauty I've seen in my child. Isn't that cool? Okay? My parents would have laughed at me. But anyway, if you do not want your picture taken, then don't fill one of these out. But please, when you go to your lab, let your TA know. You don't have to explain that you're wanted in 12 states or whatever and don't want your picture up or something. But let them know so we can make sure when we're taking pictures we don't have you. I'm going to talk about some safety procedures. This white form is the lab safety form. These are 2 things that we need to give you access, or 2 forms that we need. The white sheet gives you access to our labs. The Scantron, when it comes through, you want to fill out your student ID and your name. That's all we need. And then I'll tell you the magic last thing that you need to fill out. Okay? I'm not going to read you the whole syllabus. unless you wanted to. I could start on page, no, that would be boring, okay? But I'm going to point you to things that are in here. It is your responsibility to read it and to ask questions, and we'll have time after. Okay? We good? Man, it's warm in here. You also should have, how many of you have been to another class today where you got a free gift? Yeah, and I can't get, oh. Really? All right. Usually it's like nobody. This notebook is a free gift to you. Oh, that's sweet. You're awake and you're polite. It is important. Now think about this. You're studying for a math test. You're meeting with the professor. You're asking questions. The professor says, wow, you know this stuff. You're so confident professor knows you know that stuff, you sign your name to the test and turn it in with nothing else. What grade would you get? 0, but the professor knew what you were doing. Right? Professor needs some kind of evidence that they can show other people, right? Does that make sense? You all agree that if you turned a test in with just your name, you'd get a 0? Yeah. So, in EPICS, we do not have tests. Okay? We don't have quizzes. But we have to give you grades, okay? Wow, we're awake, polite, but we're not very confident about our ability to get a very good grade, are we? Okay, we have to have evidence of your work and your understanding. How do we get that? You write things down, okay? I don't care where you write them. You can write them in a 3-ring notebook, 3-ring binder, loose leaf paper. You can write them on the back of newspaper. Well, no. You want them legible. If you're like, oh, you're talking about writing. Writing is so last century. I'm on a digital world. That's cool. We just have to be able to see it when we evaluate you. Okay? We provide you with this if you want. I would recommend, like today, you can take notes on things. Here's a sketch. This is a way to take notes, and it doesn't cost you anything. If you're like, I really don't want to use it, bring it to lab, give it back, we'll give it to somebody else. Okay? All right. By the way, it is important. One of the things, actually there are a number of things I love about EPICS. One of the things is I know the class that you're going to take here could be one of the most useful classes that you have. Our alumni talk about the kind of preparation and experience they got, prepared them to be leaders out in their profession. What I also know is some people take EPICS, it's like, it's just a class, it didn't mean anything. A lot of that, I'm pausing a moment because I can walk on to them easier. I can walk off. All right. Some students take EPICS and it's like, it was just a class. It really depends on the effort that you put in and the dedication that you have. All of you are going to be placed on project teams for real projects that are intended to be deployed by real people. Many of you are in engineering. Many of you come from outside. The thing that we find is we need a diverse set of people to make the designs work. Everything you're going to work on has been identified as a need that somebody has. So you're going to have an opportunity to make an impact. It is also important that this is a learning experience, so I want you to have the freedom to fail spectacularly. Okay? Now what I mean by is we tried to do something nobody else did, and we did our best, and we followed all the procedures, and we made all the right decisions that we thought at the time, and it didn't work. So I want you, and when I say permission to fail spectacularly, it's like, you know what, our project didn't work, but I'd still like a good grade. You'd like a good grade at the end of the semester, right? Yeah. Okay, half a dozen of you do. I don't know about the rest. The way we know you are making the right decisions and you're doing all the right things is I've documented things. This week we met. This was the information we got. These are the things we thought about. This is the decision. Part of your documentation is insurance if your project doesn't work at the end. Does that make sense? Even if it does work, we're on a team, I'm like, oh, that's great. Well, who did what? I can point, I said, here's my documentation. I can show you the parts that I did. Okay? So I can't stress enough. It's not an extra thing that we ask, but it's very important. By the way, I don't use one of these. I use a little different, but I have a notebook too. What I've learned as an engineer, back when I used to be an engineer, designed jet engines, and I still use, I have a notebook to keep track of what I do. I just came out of a meeting, and I've got notes, here's things to do, so I can go back and see what I've done. So it's a good professional habit. It cracked me up. We had some students that said, that's so last century, nobody uses that in the real world. We went down to Habitat for Humanity. You heard of Habitat for Humanity? Yeah. Right? Their IT director for Habitat International, right? Computer whiz, probably all digital, right? Showed up to her meeting. Guess what he took out? Notepad. Notebook, writing on paper. I'm like, yes, see this? And he was closer to your age than my age too, so I thought I was a win. But anyway, okay, so now we'll see how many of you take notes over here. Okay, in EPICS, what I said is it's really what you're going to make it. We did some surveys of some of our alums that talk about EPICS being a transformational experience. We also got data from some of them like, it's a class, it's like calculus, whatever. It's really the investment. So you will get out of what you put into it. There's data there. Here's one of the things that our alums talked about, is if you're willing to take risks, and that's why I say I want you to have the freedom to make mistakes. What happens to alums is they got out and said, wow, I looked at my peers and they were making mistakes I made in EPICS. And I didn't make those. So what did the managers think about our alums? They were smarter. And they laughed and said, I wasn't any smarter. I just had Professor Oakes yell at me for that mistake instead of the manager who fired the other person and promoted me to their job. It was kind of cool. All right. So ask questions. In the syllabus, you're going to see a list of lots of people. And on this first page, you see a list of people. There are a whole lot of people that want to partner with you to do two things. One is to help you prepare yourself professionally for life after graduation. Because we at Purdue want you to be really successful. Do you know why? Successful people make lots of money and write big checks back to campus. That's not the only reason, but it helps. No, I mean, we want you to maximize your impact on the world, whether you make money or not. As long as some of you do, that's good. The other thing that we're partnering with is how do we make a difference in our community? Many of you are going to be on projects with local community partners. Some of you are going to be on project teams working in India, Africa, and far away, and some of you in between. But our partners are wanting to work with you to help support you. The cool thing with Purdue and our community and our networks is we've got people with the kind of expertise that can help you. I have our TAs. Wave if you're one of our TAs. Where'd the others go? Oh, they're out in the hall where it's cooler. Never mind. Okay, like in a math class, the TAs are good at what? Math, right? I didn't think that was a hard question. Some of you have already been in your math class, right? Like, yeah, I'm not sure about our TA. Okay. No, but what we have is we take our teaching assistants and our instructors from all across campus. We have people from liberal arts and agriculture and management, as well as engineering and technology. We've also got a lot of corporate partners that can help you both in person and virtually. So we've got a huge community, and some of the list is here. If you want to describe what EPICS is, and I get asked all the time, oh, what's EPICS? Because it was an acronym. And kind of still is, but you know you go to buy fried chicken at KFC, But you don't see Kentucky Fried Chicken, do you? Why? Well, because fried's a bad word. So they do KFC. Yeah, come eat KFC. And, okay. So I don't hide fried. Actually, and this is funny, being an engineer, is the acronym for EPICS was Engineering Projects and Community Service, and we stopped using that because we are multidisciplinary. Last year we had 70 majors. What we've learned on our campus is, oh, do you want to go take an engineering class? And some of you are like, oh, I'm not an engineer, don't want to, but we need people. So we talk about being multidisciplinary design. It's professional preparation. In about 3 weeks, there's this huge job fair, right? Industrial Roundtable. There are at least 30 companies that if you have EPICS on your resume, it will help you get on the interview list. There are about 10 of those companies that don't give us a dime in our program, but like our graduates, and it ticks me off. So they're not up there. But anyway, it is service learning too. Now, some of you, when you say, in the CS in EPICS was community service, and some of you say, oh, that's volunteering our time. But what we do is you're going to learn design, how to develop solutions, and the service is the design that we produce. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to volunteer hours at a place, that we're providing support, disciplinary expertise to that. Does that make sense? Now, in service learning, it's a hyphenated word. There's a service. So I got to say, our class, there's times that we're going to do things to make sure that you learn better. Like, we're going to ask you to write reflections in your thinking. So does that help with the project? No, but it helps your learning. Does that make sense? There's other times we're going to say, you know what, we made a decision, we got to get this product out the door. And you say, oh, but we want to redesign it again, it'd be so much fun. Our partner needs it. So we're going to stop, we're going to freeze the design and get it out the door. That's the service piece. So the thing we're always doing is trying to balance. Now here's the cool thing. Because everything you're going to work on is needed and intended to be fielded, you're going to actually learn design better. So that compromise actually enhances what you're learning. You can take lots of classes where it's like, wow, let's design something that's going to sit on a tabletop and you're going to press it once and it works. I used to design jet engines, right? You get on an airplane, how many times do you want it to work? Every time, right? And that's a different thing. It's like, how do I make sure this is going to work? So that's what we do. The learning objectives, we want you to apply your disciplinary knowledge. When you look through our assessments and things, you're going to see how I apply knowledge from my discipline. Don't care what your discipline is. You're going to be assessed with how you bring your discipline. Now, some of you are like sitting there thinking, this is like week 1. Actually, this is day 1 of college. I don't have a discipline yet. We understand. So we evaluate you based on your year and your discipline. So if you're a senior, I expect you to have some disciplinary knowledge. Does that make sense? Just a sec. So the back third, why did that not make sense? You're a senior, you're getting ready to graduate, you will have learned something, right? Ah, I see. It's just because he's not paying attention because he's down there. There we go. You're going to learn about design. Lifelong learning. We will not teach you everything. When you go out and get a job, one of the things that we teach you in class where you're a student, it's like, oh, there's somebody in the room that can answer my questions. You go out and get a job, and they give you something, and you say, well, who can answer that question? And they're like, that's what we hired you to do. And if you say, well, I can't, they're like, well, we'll go find somebody that can. So how do I use resources? You're going to learn about customers, teamwork. You're going to have opportunities to practice leadership, communication, and ethics within a social context. Those are the things you're going to learn out of the class. We don't have individual lectures on that. You're going to learn those things by applying them to a design. Does that make sense? All right. So now I said that. I said, oh, but we're in a lecture in a ridiculously hot room. What is the, you know, the weird thing is, like all summer, these rooms are so cold. We told them, you don't have to cool it so much. Maybe we should have said in the summer, but crank it down when the students come back. There are times where we try to convey information to everybody. Those are the lectures. You're all at the 4:30 class, right?
Yeah.
Second, back third. You're at the 4:30 class, all right, in case you're wondering. There's a 5:30 class too, and you're like, oh, maybe it'd be better. Well, actually, the 5:30 class goes away after this week. So don't think, oh, I can switch. The 5:30 class is just on the books for people that have a schedule conflict. You can see in the back they're taped. That's why I was careful when I was getting off the chairs, because every time I fall, it ends up on YouTube. It's embarrassing. Out here, the real work happens in your lab. So you've got EPICS another time during the week, right? Yeah. You should. That is the time where you're going to meet with your design team and actually do your design work. It's a 2-hour lab. Some of you may say, oh, I got another class that conflicts. There's 33 of these. Each one of these, when we refer to our teams, that's a section, a lab section. Okay, so you're going to be on an EPICS team, that's the lab section. A little hint, each one has a name and an acronym. If you want to be a cool EPICS student, memorize the acronym. And then go there the first time and see how they say it. Some of them do, LCC, okay, and others like SVAT. Oh, so it's not SVAT, it's SVAT. You don't care about being cool. Okay. Now, some of you are taking EPICS for 1 credit, some are 2, and you're mixed. So we expect more work out of 2-credit people. Any questions over that? You're in the class the same time. So what we expect is a 1-credit student, and in the syllabus it has our guidelines. Now here's one of the things I don't get. Students complain, it's like, oh, I spent 20 hours a week on EPICS, it was the biggest time sink. The syllabus should say about 2.5, 3.5 hours outside of work for 1 credit. Like, why are you spending 20 hours? The answer usually is one of 2 things. Either, well, I didn't tell them when I started the semester, I know I was just a first-day student, first week, but I said, yes, I'm going to go solve world peace by the end of the semester, and the faculty advisor said, sure, go for it. Maybe that was too big a chunk, okay? If you find yourself having to work too much, go back to your instructor in that section and say, I think I bit off too much. The other reason, actually there are 3 reasons. The other reason is, well, I spent 10 hours in the lab and then I realized I should have hit the power button for the meter to work. Yes, some of you are laughing. That actually happened to one of my students. The data wasn't coming out. Oh, we turned it on. Okay, so those 10 hours in the lab with the power off didn't count in my mind. I know I'm harsh, but he was a senior, okay? In electrical engineering too. But out of lab, if I'm a 2-credit student, I'm probably thinking about twice the number of hours per week. Does that make sense, right? 1 to 2? Yeah. The other thing is with lecture credits. Now here's the thing, I'm a professional engineer, so I'm required to do so many professional development hours to keep my license. I want you to think of the lecture time as professional development hours. For those of you that are new, if you're 1 credit, you're going to take the first 5 lectures and done. They're required because we're going to teach you our design process. If you're 2 credits, you just have to pick 5 other educational things, and you can talk to your instructor. They can be a workshop. I went to hear something. I went down to a shop. I learned about machining, those types of things. Those are fine. But it's kind of professional development hours. And you've got more for that. Does that make sense? Now, the hours don't matter if I don't document things. I go back to the test, right? So I was working so hard. Where's the evidence? Well, I chose not to write anything. You turned the test in blank. Okay. That's professor humor. We laugh about that. All right. Your first meeting, you're going to go to your lab. Some of you actually have been to your lab. What should happen is they're going to introduce your team members. They should ask you why you joined a team or what are you interested in. I had a team once. I think like 10 guys, 1 woman. The guys were all in engineering. The woman was from liberal arts. Okay? What? No? They went through and they're like, oh, stereotype. She can take notes and stuff. They needed to build some stuff. Now, this was before we moved to Armstrong. We didn't have all the cool equipment. Like, we need some power tools. So she and I are talking for 3 weeks. Like, are you going to tell them that you own all the stuff they're looking for? She said, not till they ask. Finally, I gave one of them a hint. I said, ask her. She's like, she's a girl. It's like, yes. And she owns all the more power tools than all you guys combined. Because she was in art and design. Like she welded for fun on the weekends. Okay? No, literally that team took 3 weeks. Oh, I got after those guys. I'm like, why didn't I? Because they were stereotyping. So if you're there, don't just go back and say, you know what, I was interested. Then if you're in computer science, you're going to probably be, oh, you can do the webmaster. Said, actually, I wanted to build something. Mention that, okay? Share what you want to do. You've got skills, you've got energy, don't be stereotyped. The team will assign you to a project probably in the first week. If that project is like, ew, this is yucky, talk to them to go back, say this really doesn't match. I will tell you, we can't put everybody on the same thing because you know that service learning side, we've made commitments to our partners. You're going to come to class, most of you will come into a class and there are projects that were not finished last semester. So we've got commitments to finish. But there's some negotiation. So we want to find a balance between your interest and the needs. Does that make sense? They're going to assign roles. Don't feel obligated to say, oh, well, I got to volunteer to be the whole project manager for the whole team on my first day. Don't volunteer for things that you don't feel comfortable doing. Okay? Ask questions. They will also do some technology checks to make sure you can get on the computers, make sure you can get into our labs. Our labs are open 24/7. If the key card works for your ID, it should work. You know how technology is? Shouldn't use should in technology, any kind of technology thing. Start to be thinking. Here's one of the things when we get to grading. Okay? We're going to prepare you for life after graduation. I get graded every year. I know it's a bummer. It's like, oh, I'm out of school, I don't get graded. But I don't get an A, B, or C. What do I get every year? Well, yeah, a paycheck. So like when I worked in industry, yes, just getting another paycheck was some years a good thing. But I'm tenured, so they can't fire me now. Yeah, it's kind of, never mind. Okay, but you're graded in promotions, raises, unless you work for a state institution that doesn't believe in raises. Sorry, slight aside, personal issue. But you get raises and things. And the way that actually when I worked at GE, they would rank everybody in the company. And the way that they did that is they did a performance appraisal. So I had to report on my progress over the last year. You're going to be asked to do this. So you're going to be asked to set goals for this semester. Now, we're going to work with you to do that. And you're going to be like, oh, I haven't even gotten into the class. How do I know what I'm going to do? You're going to start to learn the skills that you're going to need on it. Because when you go into industry, you're going to say, okay, what are your goals for this year? World peace, end of the year. Probably not realistic. How do I set realistic goals? And then, how do I report progress on those? Documentation again. Does that make sense? That's the philosophy in grading. So you want to start to think about what am I getting into and what I'm going to have. You don't have to do this in week 1 with that. Now when you get in, they're going to start to throw terms in. Now this is going to be funny because we changed some of these roles. So project manager, it was cool. We have about 12 people from industry that are part of our instructors. And we got talking about what would align better with industry. So you're going to have an overall leader of your section. This is a student. The students run the class. Kind of weird. But it works. Weird for us as a professor, see? See, I'm paid to, never mind. This used to be called a team leader. So if somebody says team leaders, you say, oh, no, that's like last year's term. Project manager. Then these design leads used to be project leads. So the idea is each project has a design lead. This person worries about the design. This person worries about are we making progress on time. Okay? Notice here, the advisor is what we call instructors. So you're not going to have an instructor, you're going to have an advisor, and the intent is we provide guidance, not tell you what to do. And it may be frustrated to say, well, what should we do here? And the answer is going to be, I don't know. What do you think? You're going to say, that's what I'm paying tuition for. I said, well, actually, you're paying tuition to develop. It might be I don't have the answer either. So it's just, okay. But it's trying to, what we want you to do is to say, okay, we want you to take a couple steps, and then we'll say, yeah, we thought that was the right direction. Does that make sense? Because what we've learned is if we say, oh, yeah, you should have gone that way, you say, okay, that's fine. You get in a situation later and go, which way did they say to go? I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. But we want you to take, and it might be you take a couple steps and say, well, actually, we think you should have gone this way. Now, sometimes I find, why'd you go this way? I would have gone that way. And they come up with the reason. I go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Okay? So they're advisors. They're also, you're going to have liaisons, communication people with our project partner community people. That's another role. And you may have what they call a project archivist, which just means you're in charge of the team's documentation for each project. And there are descriptions in the syllabus about the different roles. There are, also every division has a website. There are web tools. You don't have to be a computer expert to be a webmaster, but it's another role. And if you want what I think is the coolest job title, you can be Chief Financial Officer for my EPICS team. You don't think that's cool? Every team has to have a budget. The requirements for financial officer are you have to be able to add, subtract, multiplication would be good, and to be able to enter things in a spreadsheet. All right? Okay. Yeah, I know. I heard that. It's like, well, that eliminates me. Okay. Grading. Our grading, like I said, simulates a performance appraisal. In the syllabus is a description of, partway through, the grading rubrics. And the rubrics are, it says, EPICS grading guidelines. Okay, partway through. These are descriptions of an A, B, C student. And you're going to notice there's two types. At one, it's the 300 level, junior, senior. And then there's another one for 100, 200 level. First year students, sophomores. We expect a junior or senior to have disciplinary knowledge, right? We've established that. I also expect, if you're a senior, I shouldn't have to tell you what to do every week. Some weeks you should take initiative. Does that make sense? If you're hey, this is my first day student at college, I went through the whole semester and I got told what to do, but I did it really well, then you could get an A. Does that make sense? That does not mean you just get an A for showing up. I was told to show up. I showed up. There has to be work. Here's one of the things in EPICS. The most common grade in EPICS is an A. It's up there. Okay. 35 minutes ago, I had you, and now you're like, it's too hot. Let's just get out of here. Okay? But let me make something clear. I have students. This is weird. You know how I said some students are like, oh, EPICS, it's like 20 hours a week. It was too much work. By the way, one of the reasons it's 20 hours, students are like, well, you don't have to. I know, but it's more fun than doing math problems or something. And it is. The other thing I heard is, oh, yeah, EPICS, it's an easy A. I don't know how. Too much work. Easy A exist in the same folklore, but they do. Let me make something clear. The most common grade is an A. But students in EPICS earn A's. Okay? And the key is I want to make sure that the project meets our community partners' needs. And I'm going to do all that I can to bring my expertise within the time constraint said to advance that project. And I've documented what I'm doing. That's an A. Okay? What we find is students get invested in the project and they say we're going to do our best, and so A's happen. I bring this up. Notice if you say, hey, I did a good job all semester, what grade would you get? good, okay? For you to get an A, to say, okay, what did I do that was exceptional for my major year credit, okay? One of the things with Purdue, I was in a meeting in Washington, D.C., and somebody's reading the paper and go, hey, there's an article on grade inflation. As a faculty member, I'm like, oh, what's it? They said, Purdue's mentioned. I'm like, oh, no. They said, you're in the top 5. I'm like, no way. For grade inflation. We were in the top 5 for the least grade inflation over the last 20 years. Okay? Now, I say that because your grade point matters. I was talking to somebody who was reading something about an Ivy League school, and like, wow, 90% of the people have 4 points. Okay? It's meaningless. Well, that Ivy League school think, oh, but everybody's like a 4.0. I'm like, no. Okay, your grade point means something. Now, we have an obligation to make sure we don't have that grade inflation. A B is a good grade at Purdue. You go to some other places like, oh, it's like failing because they've inflated all the grades. I would love to have you all getting A's because that would mean you're earning them. Okay? Okay, I think I said here, juniors and seniors. By the way, when I say juniors and seniors need to show initiative, you don't have to be a leader. It just means there's some weeks, hey, we did this, you gave us this, we went to the lab, we made some of these decisions, we want to come back and report them. Okay? You also have in your, most of the work we do is dependent on the project. There is a list in your syllabus that says deliverables. This is a magic list on what could be turned in. Your TAs in your lab will have this, okay? But you want to just pay attention for the things you have. And again, these things to turn in either have to do with advancing the project or enhancing your learning. We have 3 different software tools. Our EPICS website, we put everything that we think is useful. Now, we're in the process of redesigning it because we can find everything. When you get in, the key is you go to the EPICS website, click on current students, and it should have everything you're looking for. There's a My EPICS system. Y'all use Blackboard in other classes? Blackboard doesn't quite work for us. So we have our own system called My EPICS. The third thing is a SharePoint server. It's a Microsoft product, and it's just a server that we archive things. Your projects, if they're fielded, people 10 years from now are going to need to be able to access your stuff. So we put anything related to the project up on the SharePoint site. Your individual thoughts about your weekly stuff, that can stay in your notebook. But things related to the project and the design need to be up on the SharePoint, okay? All right, I mentioned the 2 forms that you got, the safety agreement, the model release. I will tell you, there's paperwork you have to fill out to purchase things. It's the same paperwork I have to fill out. We have credit cards that you can check out and buy stuff with. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Now, your own card, you're not liable for very much. If somebody steals it, report it stolen, the company takes care of it. Our credit cards don't have your name on them. So if somebody steals it and charges stuff, I'm liable. Well, EPICS is liable. So we're very particular with the cards. We don't let you keep them overnight, over the weekend. You have to check them out. They're also a limited number, and there's a lot of you. So there's a process to go through. It's also important your team gets a budget. We have about, I don't know, we have tens of thousands of dollars companies have donated to provide materials, but it's a limited number. There's a lot of you, and there's a limited amount of money. So we're going to ask your team to estimate, this is where the financial officer comes in, how much money you need for the year. And then we make sure that we can cover that. Your team can start spending money this week. We give every team $200. So you can start, if you want to spend more than $200, you have to have an approved budget. Does that make sense? And there are other students that will look at that. If you come back and it's like, wow, I didn't have this approved, but I went out and bought this, I will say thank you, and I'll give you a form that makes you a donator to Purdue. Thank you for your donation. It's possible to get things reimbursed, but it has to be approved. So don't go and buy it without approval, okay? All right. Some safety things. Also, to make sure you don't get lost. Our EPICS labs are over in Armstrong Hall, which is just over here. There's a computer lab. By the way, this computer lab is one of the few on campus where you don't get charged for printing. Now, hang on. Every year, now I'm Scottish. Anybody know what the Scots have, like, view money? They're cheap, okay? I hate spending money. I go through, though, I want you all to be able to do what you need to do without hassles of, oh, my account, I got to go get cards. That computer lab is locked 24/7. You will have access to it. It is only for EPICS students. And it will stay free printing as long as we don't abuse it. Okay? I know it's not cool. If you see someone like, oh, you're printing a textbook, say, you know what? You're going to get our privileges taken away. Okay? So as long as it's not abused, we will continue to have that. Every year we do a how much are we spending on printing? What's that? I understand every semester there are a few people who take advantage of us, but it's a small number. So that number stays down. But anyway, that is the service. And if it's like, I got to print something, and you go in, we're not going to arrest you for printing a couple extra pages, okay? But it is a privilege. There's a build lab across. This is the main aisle in Armstrong, and there are labs in here. Now you're going to come in and you're going to say, I'm supposed to be in 1098 B or C. And it's these rooms. And you're walking by looking for the sign that says 1098 B or C. And you walk past and said, I didn't see it. I'll just be cool and I'll walk back this way. And after about 10 minutes of doing the same thing, you're like, I don't see them. Because you got to go, you're looking for these rooms. You have to go through our lab to get to the rooms, okay? So it's not going to say B or C. Go into the labs and they're in the back. All right? Do you like the little animation? There's a little meeting room here. And the main EPICS office is down the hall this way in Armstrong. Lab use, a little bit. Okay, they're only for EPICS students. This is for insurance. So we have insurance if somebody does something, somebody gets hurt or something, it gets covered. If you do something silly and break something, it's covered. But if we have non-EPICS students in, then our insurance isn't any good. We can bring other people in, but they have to sign the same forms and go through the training. And as I said, it is a privilege for the printing. We also want to think of safety. Do not, if you're not sure of what to do, ask. I don't want anybody getting hurt. If you're in the lab, I'm like, we're too tired to be doing this, go home. It is okay to go back and say, we would have finished it, we got so exhausted we thought we were going to get hurt. If you get in trouble for your instructor, have them come see me, okay? Biggest thing, I don't want anybody hurt. Let me ask you, there's a 5S thing. I'm going to fly through this. Our labs, big philosophy, okay? We got awesome labs. They're in the first floor, Armstrong, behind glass. If you guys take care of them, we can enable really cool stuff. If you don't treat them well and people can't find stuff, we can't do as much good for the community, so it's important. Our lab managers put in this 5S. It's hilarious. They asked all the industry people, are you familiar with 5S? They all had the same reaction. They're like, oh yeah. They all use it out in industry and I don't like it. One of the things is to be able to sort things. If you see anything, if you see your project with a red tag, that means it wasn't in the right place. And a red tag thing means it's there for a week, and if nobody claims it, it's gone. Okay? So having a red tag on your project's bad, right? Because it'll get thrown out, and then you'll fail. That'd be bad, right? Okay. We want to put things in the right place, so if you take something, put it back. If you're not sure where it is, ask. All right, we all sweep floors and stuff. After you're done, clean up. Okay, you should try to leave the lab at least as clean as when you arrived. We're trying to standardize things and change. And I will tell you, the other lecture has returning students. You all are new and say, hey, we got to treat these labs better than you all did. That's what we learned. Rephrase it. a little bit, and then try to sustain. It really is. We have a privilege of the space we have. We have an opportunity to make a huge difference in the world. But we've got to work with each other to enable us to do that. All right. Briefly with emergency procedures. And I'm going to show you, if you're in this, if something goes wrong, you see something not right, call 911. One of the things, if you use a cell phone, what's the first thing you should tell the operator? Where you are. Okay? First thing. In fact, they're trained to say, where's your emergency? So you go on and say, I'm in. Here's the place. You can sign up for your text alerts, which on Friday and Saturday night, if you have your phone on, keep chiming with the drunk people on whatever for that. If we hear, so there are a couple different things. Evacuating a building or what they call shelter in place, like we're trying to get into a place. If we evacuate when you're in Armstrong, the gathering place is between Push Student Hospital and Civil Engineering or Hampton, right out here on the mall. Now, it's important if we evacuate that you go there, because we will have somebody, and we've talked with TAs and instructional, if you're in the lab, they're going to take a roster out and said, he was in our lab and he's not here. If it's a fire, his name's going to get sent to the fire department, and they're going to go in looking for him. So if you go home, we don't know that. Okay, so you want to stay with the group. Everyone in Armstrong goes to the same place, so there'll be hundreds of people. So you want to stay with your group. If we have that happen and you're in an EPICS lecture in this building, we're going to go to the same location. Okay? I hope it does not have to happen. If you hear, so basically what it is, if you hear a siren, go away from the siren. If the siren goes off in the building, it means get out of the building. If the sirens outside go off, get into a building. Okay? And there are a couple reasons. One could be, severe weather. Most common things, tornadoes. Now, for those of you not from the Midwest, sirens go off a lot and you don't see a tornado. But occasionally they come through. Siren goes off, we go into a basement, okay? Or you follow people in. Hazmat, chemical stuff goes off. Never seen one of these, had them. You want to go into a building and then listen to where you're being instructed. Okay, because it's not always the basement. If the chemical hazard is heavier than air, that's a bad place. I really pray we don't have to do this again. Okay, if you go out, the sirens go off, it's an active shooter, you want to get into a room. And if you want, we can talk more. There's some Purdue websites on what to do. In your labs, you go into your lab room, they'll turn the lights off, you get away from the door. And we will have locked that. And you just stay until those sirens go off. If you hear the sirens and the other stuff, if you get an alert, we had students when this, we had the person who was shot in electrical engineering that was over here. We had students like, oh, class is over. I guess I got to get to my next class. Don't worry about your class. All right? No, but I mean, it's trying to be conscientious. What do I do? This happens. Here's what I had. And for that, okay? Ask questions. Okay, 5:30 lecture, you're not here. Ask questions again. I am so excited about this year. We have the opportunity to do amazing things this year. If you have any friends, you're like, wow, you're not doing this EPICS thing. We have one of the largest classes ever. We do have a few spaces on some teams. Please make sure that on question 1, you put in true. And as you go out, there'll be TAs to collect the papers you signed in your Scantron. If you have any other questions, come down and see me. All right? Thank you.